Okay. Hello, all of my students from Spicy Curry's grade 9 class. And I don't know what other class to call, I guess my small group math. Um, I hope everybody's staying safe and keeping social distancing as a priority and making sure you wash your hands and all that good stuff. And I know things are challenging right now, and I know that a lot of you probably don't miss doing schoolwork, but you probably miss school. Some of you probably miss a lot of your classmates that you haven't been able to see, or some of you might even miss some of your teachers that you haven't been able to see. But let me assure you that I really miss teaching this class, and I hope that before the school year is out, we get to at least get together again at some point in the future and see each other face to face. But with that said, the way we're going to do this now is I'm going to give you some questions. I'm going to give you 9 questions. Now, if you want, what you can do is if you have a computer, you can type in this into your web browser. And what that's going to do, if you click on that, and I'm going to click on the little, oh, that's not what I want to do. Hang on a second. If you click on this little globe here, you're not going to go, if I click on the globe, you can't click on the globe. But if you do, what it's going to do is it's going to bring you up to a page where you're going to get this PDF. Now, if you have a printer, you can print it off. If you don't have a printer, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and copy down the questions. And or if you don't want to do that at all, don't worry about it, because what you can do is I'm going to go through 9 questions, and they're all here one at a time. And what you can do is you can press pause, copy down the question on a piece of paper, and do the work and get an answer. And once you have an answer, press unpause and check to see if your solution is correct. And you can listen to my explanation if you got it wrong to make sure that you're doing it right the next time we do it. And we're going to do questions like this, 9 questions for the first little while a day. And that's all you have to do. And then once you're done, um, eventually what we're going to do is you're going to take a picture of your work and you're going to send me a copy of your picture or your score. And I'm going to kind of keep formative tabs on how well you're doing and get some feedback to you if I can. And hopefully, eventually, we're going to be able to do this class face to face. And that will be great. So with that said, here's question 1 if you want to press pause and try it. And here is your solution. So if you're adding two integers together, now remember what we did when we were working on this. We said -4, we can think of as being 4 negative integer chips. And +6, we can think of it as being 6 positive integer chips. And remember when we put lines through it, we said that a -1 and a +1 are what we call a zero pair. So when we combine these two integers together, the 4 negatives combine with the 4 positives to make a final answer of +2, the answer. Another way to think about it, was if you owe $4 and you have $6, a +6 would mean having $6, -4 would be owing 4. You could pay off all of your debt and still have $2 left over, is what the intention of that type of question. That would be a simple question that you could use to figure it out. All right, second question, 6 take away -2. Press pause if you're doing it. All right, so here's what you do. Now, we said before, if you have $6, and someone takes away $2 worth of debt, if you remove debt or you take away debt from somebody, you actually make them richer because the money they owe is no longer a part of what they owe. They don't have that debt anymore. And you would get an answer of a +8 if you thought of it that way. But we said there's an easier way to do it. When you're subtracting integers, if you keep the first integer as 6, change subtraction to addition, and use the opposite of the second integer. In this case, -2's opposite would be +2. A +6 plus a +2 is still a +8. So whether or not you thought of it as being you have $6 and somebody takes away $2 worth of debt, you now have $8, or you're now worth $8. Or if you kept the first integer, changed it to addition, and used the opposite of the second to get +8. Either way, your answer is +8. Your third question says -3 times -2. Go ahead and press pause. All right, so the solution to this one's pretty simple. If you simply ignore the integer signs and think of it as being 3 times 2, 3 times 2 is 6. And remember what we said before, if you are multiplying or dividing and they have the same signs will always be a positive product. And if they're different, you will always have a negative. So if we look here, a negative and a negative are the same signs. So because they're the same, we're going to have a +6 as our answer. Question 4, we're getting into adding fractions. And remember, when we have adding fractions, Maddie is quite good at the adding of fractions. Hopefully she's still good at them, even though it's a month later. But if we think about this as being 1/2 plus 1/8, the first thing you need to do is find a common denominator. And remember what we did, and eventually we get really good at it. If we think of the multiples of 2, we have 2, we have 4, we have 6, we have 8, we have 10, we have 12, we have 14, we have 16, and we can go on to infinity, because those are all multiples of 2. And if we think of the multiples of 8, we have 8, 16, 24, 32. And then if I asked you, well, what multiples do those two numbers share? The first one they share is 8. The second one they share is 16. And eventually they would share 24 and 32 as well. But with that said, the first multiple they share is 8. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to use that as our common denominator in our equivalent fractions. So 1/8 is still going to be 1/8. It's not going to change at all. But the 1/2 is going to be equal to how many 8s? Because we want to make sure that the size of our pieces when we add them are the same. So remember what we did here is we said, well, what did I multiply 2 by to get 8? Well, we multiplied it by 4. So therefore, I have to multiply the numerator by that same thing. And we've created an equivalent fraction of 4/8, which is the same size as 1/2. So 4 pieces out of 8 is the same size or same amount as 1 piece out of 2, or half. So therefore, I can put 4/8 as my equivalent fraction to 1/2 instead. So instead of saying 1/2 plus 1/8, I can say 4/8 plus 1/8. And now we're just going to add our numerators. To get 4/8 plus 1/8 will be a total of 5/8. Question 5, we have subtraction of fractions. So we have 3/5 take away 1/4. So the same thing happens when you subtract integers or fractions, excuse me, as it does when you add. You have to first find your first common multiple. And if I did this, I would do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And I would go 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and I'll stop there. The first multiple they share, if you saw it, you probably did. The first multiple they shared was 20. So therefore, in my fractions, my equivalent fraction denominator is going to be 20. And then what I need to do is I say, well, 3/5 is equal to how many 20ths? Because I want to make this fraction into its equivalent fraction. I multiplied it by 4 to get 20, so I multiply the numerator by 4 to get 12. So 12 20ths and 3/5 are equivalent fractions. And 1/4 is equal to how many 20ths? If we multiply this by 5 and 5, we get 5 20ths. So 1/4 and 5 20ths are equivalent fractions. So instead of saying 3/5 take away 1/4, we can say 12 20ths plus 5 20ths. And now that we have the same denominator, oh, sorry, it's subtraction, not addition. So now we can subtract our numerators and keep our denominator, and we end up with a final answer, 12 take away 5 is 7, of 7 20ths. Now your next question is algebra. And remember when we solved algebra, we said there are 2 ways you can solve algebra. The first way is by what we call inspection, and that just means read the question and figure it out in your head. So what this says is, what number do I take away 5 from it, and it leaves me with 2? So I say, what number take away 5 is 2? The answer is that number has to be 7, okay? Because 7 take away 5 is 2. So by inspection, we get the answer of x equals 7, and that's the solution. However, the second way we learn to solve it is by opposite operation. So if I take this question again, I should make this eraser a little bigger, and I say, okay, I want to isolate the variable. I want to get x to be by itself. So I have to get rid of everything that's with it. And on this side, what's with it is this minus 5. So I want to get rid of that. So I want to do the opposite of minus 5, which is, of course, adding 5. And I want to do it to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to add 5. That's going to create a 0 pair. I'm going to be left with x, which is isolated. And a positive 2 and a positive 5 make a 7, or a positive 7, and I get the same solution of x equals 7. So remember, there are 2 ways you can solve it, either by inspection or opposite operation. What I'd like you to do is learn how to solve it by opposite operation, because that's going to help you when the equations get a little bit more complex or a little bit more difficult. You're going to have a strategy for being able to solve it. Your next question, what number take away 4 is equal to -1? So by inspection, what number do I take away 4 from, and I leave with -1? the answer by inspection would be x equals 3, because 3 take away 4 is -1. But if I use opposite operation, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, create a 0 pair, and x is equal to, what is a -1 and a +4 combined to? Well, remember, that's a -1, and that's a +4. So if I combine them, that's a 0 pair. I'm left with 3. So when I combine a -1 and a +4, I get 3. So either way, either by inspection or by opposite operation, I get the same solution of x equals 3. Now question 8 says 2x equals 10. And what 2x means is 2 times the value of x. This is called a coefficient. Remember we talked about that. And that means a multiplier to x. So 2 times what number is equal to 10? So by inspection, what do I multiply 2 by to get the answer of 10? We probably can figure out that 2 times 5 is 10, so x equals 5. But if we solve it using opposite operation, and I say, well, what number, how do I get rid of a multiply by 2? What's its opposite operation? The opposite is dividing by 2. And you could do this, divide by 2, and you get x equals 5. But remember what we said is, instead of showing it with a division symbol, what we started to do was do this to mean division by 2, right? Divide by 2, divide by 2. Divide by 2, you get x. 2x divided by 2 is just 1x, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Remember, this means 10 divided by 2, they're the same thing. So either way, you end up with the same answer of x equals 5. And finally, your last one, it says x over 5. Now remember, this means is the same thing as x divided by 5. These are the same thing, just like we talked about in the last question. So if x over 5 means x divided by 5, what is the opposite operation to this? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second, because we have to solve by inspection first. So if we solve by inspection, what number divided by 5 is 1? What number do I divide by 5 to get 1? Well, what number, any number divided by itself is 1, so therefore x must be 5, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. So by inspection, we get x equals 1. By opposite operation, since I want to use the opposite of dividing by 5, the opposite of that is multiplying by 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. And I get x equals 5. All right? Okay, that was a lot of work in a short period of time. Hopefully you used your pause button to your advantage. If you didn't, you just watched the whole thing through. Now for the first few, I'm not going to get you to take a picture of your work and send it in to me. We're just going to practice. We're just going to get used to being back in a math-minded mind frame. But eventually we're going to get to the point where I'd like you to take a picture of your work and send it to me. So hopefully that wasn't too difficult for you and you're enjoying being home with your parents. Be easy on them. Boomer parents are not the same age as you guys, and you probably realize quite quickly that you guys have a lot that aren't in common, but you know, help your parents out around the house. They're just as stressed as you are, and hopefully we all get through this sooner rather than later, and we're back face to face, back in a math classroom. Miss you guys terribly, and we'll